I was gonna be like staying frozen to make it look like my camera froze, but that would be not funny. It's like,
Hey, what's up? It's John from Coding Addict, and welcome to another episode of Web Dev Power Hour live stream. And as always, I'm joined by one and only Mr. Paul Bratlovsky, the developer advocate for Strappy, the greatest CMS created
ever,
ever,
ever created.
and the mastermind behind YouTube channel Coding After 30. Again, Paul's channel is Coding After 30. How are you, Paul?
Very good. How are you, John? I'm glad to be here because I just want to say this is the best ever web development podcast compared to any other podcast out there. It's just true facts, no denying it. I didn't just make that up or just say it for the sake of saying it. I even on the Twitter post, that's what I put, the best ever podcast ever that people should watch.
Yeah, I think the reason why we have so many so so little viewers is because we keep repeating best, and I can just see the audience like dropping like.
Yeah, they're
Anyway,
missing out,
yeah,
it
but
happens.
um, and if you prefer us in a podcast format, you can always find us webdevpowerhour.com as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just look for Web Dev Power Hour. As always, if you have a question, just post it in the chat, and hopefully, eventually, we'll be able to provide a useful answer. How was your week?
Pretty good. I was gonna say actually, I listened to a bunch of episodes on Spotify, and it's actually a pretty nice experience. Like if you're walking or going for a jog or doing laundry, it's actually a pretty convenient way of doing it outside of YouTube. So I'm kind of glad you're posting the podcast there. It's pretty cool. But my week was good. It's the weekend. Uh, my problem that I have is I try to create these big projects and they quickly start to get too big for me to think about. And I'm just like, why? What? Why?
but okay, but let me ask you the question: how are you, let's say, of starting those projects? I mean, thinking about them is one thing, but do you actually like follow through, and then let's say the 10% that you need to finish, or you're like,
I'm like a 10% done. I got like 90% to go. But the issue so I realized the place that I'm at, like it's like it depends what your goal is. Like for me, like I have a job, so for me my next kind of like part is like, can I actually create something that people will use? And so I want to create something and put users onto it, and I want it to be something of value to them. And when you start thinking that way, it's like you realize there's so many moving parts that you don't think about when you just create projects for yourself or for your portfolio. Because if it doesn't deploy one day or if something breaks, it's fine. There's no urgency to fix it. But when there's like people using it, that's kind of like stressful in itself. But I do want to go through the process to have at least one project where I could say, hey, I created this website and I have this many users on it. Kind of show this idea that I understand the process going from idea to market. I don't know why like that's stuck in my head, but I think that'll be cool.
no, that would be very cool. I mean, the one that you're working on right now, the Dev Hunter, is really good. But that's the thing though, as far as the following through, because like when you have, or when you're already logging in those 40 hours, then
Yeah,
plus you still have a life,
yeah,
again, I'm always the biggest advocate for not doing this like 60 hours
yeah.
plus crazy, whatever stuff. I think that like having a life is very important. And then plus on top of that, you have the project. That's why it really comes down to planning, as far as just deciding, yes, for sure, I want to do this one. Because if you don't do that, then it's yeah, it's kind of.
I mean, for me, what helps really, like coding is a hobby I enjoy right now, and to me, like it's something I like doing. So it kind of works in my favor. But yeah, definitely have to plan and make time. I also, unlike, which is like lucky for me that I have this opportunity. My daughter is like turning 23, so I don't have like little kids. So to me, I do have that extra time that some people that have kids right now that you have to take care of wouldn't have. And I know that's like not fair. And so while I have this time, like I try to take advantage of it.
Kids are definitely
because
little
you
little vampires for time. That's for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, listen, that's
But
already pretty well known. The moment you get kids, you realize, oh my god, I had
oh
so
my, it's
much
like
time
what,
on my
like
hands.
exactly. I had so much time. What happened? That's exactly what happened when Marissa was born. I was like, oh my god, I should have been more productive while I didn't have any kids. Now it's like I don't
Yep.
have time to do all the things I want.
That's literally the everyday conversation me and my wife have. We're just,
But
oh my god, we were wasting so much of our time.
speaking of projects though, so like here's the thing with my dev hunt, the current issue I have. So I'm like, I need to have like a markdown editor so people could have a nicer experience writing markdown. And then Notion, right? And Notion is this complex like beast of a software. And if you wanted to create something yourself, like the way they work with blocks and all this other stuff, and you get the data, I think, in JSON, it's so complex. And so that literally blew my brain like up in a way that I was like, I can't even, like, that's just gonna take me a year to build up myself. And I'm like, what am I thinking? And so like one of the things I realized about building projects is start with like the simplest implementation of a feature, get it working, and then over time, once you have it deployed and you have users, then you start doing it. But it literally ate up my whole week of thinking of like, well, what do I do? What's around there? I took a look at all these different like editors that were there. And even where there's a lot of them that were done for you already, just to implement it and set it up and do all those things, it will still take like a long time. And so I was like, I'm going to go back to the basics and just create a very simple implementation. And then I realized eventually, once my app is deployed and I have users, uh, then I could take a feature and like say that markdown editor, and then I could implement it and take my time and not rush. But if your project, let's say, is not on the market and people are not using it and you're still like working on it, I think like you shouldn't overcomplicate things. And that's like a struggle that's real, is people start a project and they quickly have scope creep, and it gets so far that it really discourages them to continue. And literally today I was like, Paul, just go do a simple thing, because otherwise you're going to quit this project and you'll never finish it because you keep adding more complexity and more complexity, and you don't even have users on it yet.
No, that's for sure. I can 100% agree. And that's one of those things where I've noticed that it's easier, let's say, once you're done with the project, and let's say few months go by and I take a look at that project and I'm like, you know what, I could add this feature. And then
Yeah.
it's way easier, even though, yes, you need to go back and you need to double check, like, hey, what's the actual setup for the code. But it's still, you don't have this like overwhelming thing of like, okay, I've been working on this already for 3 weeks. I don't want to spend another, like, I'm already a little bit overwhelmed. I want to do something else. And I definitely have noticed that, of course, there's going to be times when you have to push it through. You literally have to just get something done. But if you don't want to be totally overwhelmed, and having that structure where, like, this is the features that I'm going to add for now, it's always going to be possible to add them later. It's not a
Yeah.
big deal if you build the basics and you're like, okay, this week maybe I'll start working on something, and then next week I might add something else. And yeah, I definitely think that's a very good approach. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
it can be
And
painful.
I realized like when you're by yourself, scoping projects correctly and not trying to take on more than you could choose, super important. Because what people don't realize, a lot of projects that you might look and you're like, oh, this is a cool project, but for a lot of these projects, that there might have been a team that worked on it like many hours, many weeks. And if you're like by yourself, like realistically, are you going to be able to do everything they did as a team and spend months of doing yourself like really quickly? No. And like an interesting example in that, like there's a lot of solo game developers, and the biggest problem in that uh, uh, field, I forgot what the word is skipping me right now, but like indie game developers, yes. And what happens for a lot of them, most of them fail, and a lot of them just never finish the game, because in order for the game to be competitive, they have to do so much stuff. And yeah, there's few like home runs, but they're competing with other teams, and sometimes it's like you can't do that much work by yourself. And so I realized, even my project that I'm currently working is going to get to a point where I might have to, like, maybe make it open source and get some people to help out to work on it. You know what I mean? Because it's impossible to do massive projects by yourself. And so, like, that got me thinking, like, how do you balance, like, creating a good projects for your portfolio without going too crazy with it?
Yeah, that's a very good question because like as far as making it open source, I don't know. There's only one. Like I don't have experience with it. I haven't done that, but I have only like hired, let's say, a designer or whatever to make something for me. That's a little bit different. But as far as open source, from what I've heard, some videos and stuff like that, you literally it becomes like it's more like it's pretty painful. So I don't
Yeah,
know whether
I
that
probably can
that's a
manage. Like, yeah, I could
it's
imagine.
like
But I would say then, if you're building something that has value, you might be like better off like hiring someone part time to help you then, because like I see how some things could get like really ridiculous. Even when I started, I'll give you an example at my last job where I created the application with React and Strappy, but it got to a point that got so big that even for me to keep up with the amount of work that we had to do became impossible. And so, like, my boss had to hire like 4 more developers just so we could actually continue to deploy features much faster. And that's one thing I realized is, like, the bigger your project gets, the more exponentially the effort of maintaining it and working on it becomes. And so I think what people should do is they should come up with like the most basic feature and build it from start to finish, and then add a new one, but not like try to add features while the project is still being built.
no, yeah, no, that's gonna be one of those things when you're planning the project. You're like, oh, I could this feature and I could add that feature, and then you
Yeah.
start working on it, and then you even get more ideas. But at some point, there's gonna come that point where you're like, whoa, I'm like too deep. That's it, and that's why it's always better to restrict yourself right from the get go and be like, no, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna, and only once this is done, then I'm gonna look forward. Before we jump into the questions, I'm really curious about last week you and I saw some bits and pieces of that interview. You talked about Web3. So,
Yeah.
what did you learn? What are your thoughts? What's the story?
So, I mean, I would recommend people go check out the episode. There's a lot of stuff, but basically, anybody who talks about Web3 to make money, they're probably going to scam you. Even like for developer jobs, like it's just like, because like, and I even asked like my friend who's Web3, I'm like, do you invest in Bitcoin or whatever? He's like, no, I don't. He's like, I invest in the technology by learning how to code and use it to build cool projects. But the nature of it, it's most of the people that do it who are not trying to take your money, they're doing it more basically for this concept of freedom of speech and making sure that there's no one entity that could control like one thing and have a monopoly on it. Instead, is to have it spread out and stuff. And so the whole idea in Web3 is this concept of like freedom. And then basically, a lot of true Web3 developers, in the majority of cases, they're doing it not also because there's potential to make money, but he was saying to me, to make money in that field is really, really hard. And a lot of times when you do get into the nitty gritty things that have to do with crypto, he's like, you literally need to have like that PhD knowledge, or like some like you have to be really, really smart. And that kid, by the way, is like really, really smart. And he basically, it was kind of cool to see like a real perspective of what it's like. And I really appreciated it. And I realized that a lot of people on YouTube who do Web3, like they're either selling you Web3 courses, or they're, trying to sell you a token. And even my friend said, he said, like, look, like, even if you learn Web3, doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a job, because it's very difficult. And there's not that many companies that hire for that. And so a lot of times it's like you basically have to make your opportunities. So he's been working in Web3, but he's been working as a contractor or a consultant, and he had to find his own like opportunities and clients. It's not like he got hired by a company. And so it was kind of cool to see like a really realistic description of what it's like, because I'm kind of glad I didn't fall into that trap of being like, ooh, new shiny thing, let me jump onto it and try it out, you know what I mean? And so that was cool, you know.
No, for me, listen, like I first of all, I want to right away say that I don't know anything about Web3 or crypto, whatever. I haven't been, I really didn't like, I haven't spent any time researching. My
Yeah.
biggest pushback is to it is the fact that on every platform, pretty much the biggest scammers, biggest, like literally the ones you know who are scamming people, right? Have to do something with the crypto. Not, and again, I'm not saying that crypto generates those scammers, which could also be true. But what I'm saying that every like scummiest or whatever, like influencer, whatever, has started doing something with crypto, and that makes me very, very cautious about it. So I was like,
Yeah.
the moment I saw that, I'm like, nope. Even if it's that, even if it is the case, right, that it's this like awesome thing or whatever, I'm like, you know what? I'd rather be late than
Yeah.
be wrong about it. So.
What my friend told me, he's like, it's even hard to find like a community with legitimate like help or legitimate like crypto stuff where people not trying to scam you. And what he said to me is like, look, if you're really excited about Web3, don't, you know, go crazy, invest in stuff that you don't understand. Don't like buy like a course thinking that in 30 days or 3 months you're going to get a job and make bajillion dollars. He said, no, work on normal programming, web development, so you could have a steady job and do that Web3 stuff like on the side until you figure it out. Uh, and one of the things he said, because I asked him, I'm like, what do you think of people investing in like the technology and the coins and stuff like that? And what he told me, he's like, anybody who's thinking of any type of investment should understand how it works, like on a technical level. Even if you're not a developer, he said, like you
Mhm.
should really understand what the technology is, what it does, because otherwise you're just guessing. You're just listening to other people who are just repeating other people's stuff and like, oh, this might go up or this will never go down. This like whatever. But it's so like speculative. And a lot of people recently lost a lot of money. Like if they had like
Yeah,
that
I
crazy
mean,
like exchange that completely went
yeah,
uh
yeah.
up Shit's Creek. And so to me, I'm into like boring and safe stuff than I am into trying like new
Yeah,
stuff,
me
because
too.
I used to try to do like exciting and cool. And every time I tried something exciting and cool, I lost money. I lost money every time. And so now I'm like, it's really hard to make money. It's very easy to lose it. So let me just do the most boring things. And like I said, I have a friend who's a financial investor, and I kept telling him like, "Oh, you got to come on the show, like talk about like 5 things like someone could do to like." And he's like, "It's like the most boring stuff that it's not going to be exciting, and I don't even want to make a video because people are going to be too bored with it because there's just these basic rules, and but." The allure of making lots of money fast is what gets people excited. And then, people put on their mortgage like like money or the rent money. Uh, so for me, like I don't do stuff like that. I just do the basics, and if anything, I invest in education and myself rather than somebody else's pocket.
Yeah, no. This probably is gonna definitely sound like two old guys talking, but I always go like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So yeah, I'm good.
So I'll tell you a story. My fiance, her aunt, like my ex fiance, I should say, she came from a very wealthy family, and so I went to them in Thailand. I went to this like it was an investment thing where like it was not crypto, but it was like similar along those lines. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait a second, this really seems like a scam, like a Ponzi pyramid. And I try to tell like my fiance, and she's like, yeah, but my aunt is not gonna listen to you. She's just not gonna listen to you, like whatever, whatever. And because what they were doing, they were running the scam where it's like they were saying something stupid, like in a month you could get like 20% return on your money. And
Yeah.
they were able to do that for the first few months. Why? Because there's new people coming in.
Hmm.
And so they would get people hooked. And then she ended up losing $2 million.
Ooh.
And
Yep.
it was devastating. And like, there's nothing anybody could have done. And because it's in a different country, like, and that scam was basically like, they'll never get that money back. And so and I see Kit Kat is here. Katya.
Yeah.
Katya is amazing because she literally took a bunch of your courses, kept her nose in the studying, did her thing, and then became a web developer. And it was amazing because, like, there's a lot of people, and I would love to have her talk about her story and stuff. There's a lot of people in our community that started alongside with her because we had like a community project we were working on and all this other stuff. And then she just kept just doing the thing. She didn't like watch too many opinionated YouTube videos. She just kind of did her thing. She had her path, and then now she's been working as a developer for like at least a year now, I believe. It was amazing. And the hilarious part about it, I still have this guy who started before her still asking me, what does he need to do to improve his resume? And it's been like so many years now, and he still doesn't have a job. And I realized what the secret sauce is what Katya had, Kit Kat, here in the chat, is the fact that she just decided she's going to do whatever it takes and not care what anybody says and just do her thing. You know, she didn't need like reaffirmation from other people or chase the shiny thing. And that's amazing. Like, I'm very, very, very proud of her. Really great job.
No, it's awesome work. It's awesome. It's always I'm always very very happy when someone does that and turn like basically succeeds, because it does take effort, and you do need to kind of zero in on stuff and just don't listen to anything outside and all that stuff. She's probably though coming back from night out because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. She's in England, so if we ever want to interview, we'll probably have to switch it around and set it up on different time and all that.
Yeah, actually, it'll be cool to have her like on this. Yeah, like have her come on Coding Addict. Yeah, do like a morning episode. It'll be amazing.
Yeah. Okay, we have a few questions, so we can actually jump in.
Nice.
So we have we have Engine Boy. Hey, what do you think should be next thing after React.js, like Node or Next or TypeScript, or else? I guess I would say Next, but since Paul is saying that Next 13 is going to need TypeScript, then TypeScript. I definitely would go Next or Remix
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Go Next. Right now, some of their newer features, they're a little wonky, but still good. They're going in the right direction. But I would say go Next, set up a TypeScript project, even though you may not know TypeScript, because that's what I did. And then you could rename your files to be JSX versus TSX. And then that way, like, the code won't complain. And then you could learn TypeScript together. And so that's like a good approach that I've been kind of experimenting with, where I learned TypeScript incrementally. But I think like learning Next after React is super important. And my favorite is Remix. I really like Remix.
What is that, Paul? Can you tell us more about
Remix is just such a fun and pleasure to work with, just because it simplifies stuff where you actually end up writing less React, and even some of the things like that Next.js does, which are similar to what Remix does. Remix still has a more elegant approach to it, because I basically created two different projects, and I'm actually working on a mini video for your channel to show how to create a landing page with Next.js 13 using the new folder structure. We're not going to go too crazy, but more importantly, I'm going to show how to use Strappy to be able to dynamically build a landing page and have it generate on your front end. But basically, I created that project with Next.js and Strappy, and I also had created a similar project with Remix and Strappy. And for me personally, Remix is just much nicer to work with,
Mhm.
and stuff like that. The one thing that Next.js has that I always like take for granted is their image component that automatically optimizes your image based on, if it's full
Mhm.
view, mobile view. And what I didn't even know, but even in mobile view, like if you have, let's say, a bunch of posts and they have images on each, it will be smart enough to know to load them incrementally as you scroll, and which is like kind of impressive. So there's definitely like both have pros and cons. I feel like my honest opinion, even though it doesn't hurt me too much, but I love Remix way more to make this statement, but if someone's looking to get a job, I think learn React, with Create React App, and then jump into Next, because I think Next is still much more popular and it's supported by a bigger company. Although, Remix just got uh, bought out by
Shopify.
exactly, and so they have a good company behind it. So we know that now the developers could focus on continue to uh, work on it without worrying about money and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I also would say that like if you're done with React, let's say if you're comfortable with React, switch from Create React to either of them. And it looks like though that TypeScript has become a sort of like GraphQL for Gatsby, where you will have to understand to basically work with them. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a good thing or bad thing, however you want to look at it. But that was the thing for me. The reason why I learned GraphQL is not because, like I said, okay, I want to learn this thing. It was just literally Gatsby was using it, and I just had to implement it and all that. So
Yeah, so I see actually like a really good comment. Sorry, I'm going to jump into it. The reason it jumps out because I had somebody else ask me similar questions, but Slipstream01 asks, as a beginner, do I need advanced projects for a portfolio, or is it okay to make simple sites with some use effect and use state, some images about content and simple landing page? Um, that's I think is a great question, and I think like what the I think you could go first with the answer, and then I'll talk about like something that I ran into with like someone's portfolio that I looked at.
well, first of all, let's start with the fact that I always suggest having only 3 projects
Yeah,
in a portfolio. And what that means to me is that you're essentially all the time upgrading. So you can start with the most basic ones. And again, we're returning back to the same thing that we talked about it before, where again, we are pretty much in, I think every episode we talk about the same thing that you need to start applying as soon as possible, because that's the only way to see
yeah,
what the companies in your local area are actually expecting from you, because you can decide or listen or like get bunch of useful info, but it's never going to be exactly what the what the job market in there might be asking. So I'll definitely start with those things, and then you can essentially, yes, do the simple projects.
yeah.
They're very good stepping stone. Now, do you have to make let's
20.
say 15 of them? No. If you,
Yeah,
let's say, make one or two and you're comfortable, it doesn't mean that you need to constantly just keep doing it. No. Then you look then you need to go along the lines of, okay, so I understand how to build the basic static stuff. How can I make this more dynamic, right? How can I add more features? How, I don't know, users or whatever, something of that sort. And slowly but surely, your portfolio also is going to get more impressive.
yeah. So one portfolio that I saw recently, what was interesting is this person was looking to get a job as a web developer, and like two things stood out for me. Number one is they had a bunch of games. Yeah, they were with JavaScript and whatever, but to me, it literally did not feel relative to like the position that you're applying. I think you should be mimicking types of projects that you would be building at work. And the second thing that I noticed is that a lot of people like put projects like into their portfolio, and then something breaks, but they never check. And so they'll send you their resume with their portfolio. You go to their portfolio, and half of their websites don't work. And I think like start small, start simple, but make sure that anything that you put in your portfolio works and is not broken. And I basically like on the same side as you, John, let's say like build 3 projects, and you should have like two, simple projects. And then your third one could be your cornerstone project, something that basically encompasses like user authentication, CRUD functionality, create, update, delete, and whatever. And kind of showcases that you understand how to work with APIs, how to get data from the API, how to send data to an API, save it to the database. And you don't have to do the back end yourself. There's definitely a lot of solutions. And that's why, like, for a majority of stuff that I work, when I build a full stack application, I use Strappy because you could literally set up an API in 5 minutes. But I think having like a dynamic website where the data is presented by the API and you show that you understand how to use it, I think is a good cornerstone project.
Yeah, that essentially those would be the steps. First start with the static one, then you showcase how that you can get the data in the application, and the third one is that you know how to set up essentially a communication between your front end and the server. So it's
Yeah,
not just getting the data in it. Now you can showcase that you can post, you can edit, you
yeah,
can delete. And again, it doesn't have to be a LinkedIn clone. I mean, for
yeah,
the most part, it's literally going to be something that
yeah,
effectively is a CRUD functionality.
yeah.
I want to
The
do. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna add last 2 cents here. So when I used to do a community where we're working on projects together, the thing that I would recommend is I would say start with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and build a basic one-page website that has a bunch of section that showcases that you know responsive design with CSS. You understand how to target elements with JavaScript because you add some basic functionality, and obviously HTML. The second part, take that project. Now you don't have to recreate the CSS because you already made it, right? So now take that project and convert it to use React. So that way you could, and then you could add additional pages. So now you understand routing, you understand React, you understand the basics features of React, how to manage state using use effect, like all that other stuff. And then after that, take that same project and rebuild it with next.js, and then basically connect it to an API where you could show like you know how to work and do CRUD functionality. And so basically each previous project is the stepping stone to allow you to move on to your second project, and they're all related. Because if you create, let's say, like a tic-tac-toe game, or you create something like they're, yeah, you're coding, but the projects are not relevant in terms of like, first of all, the type of stuff you're building at your work. And so like it's kind of easy, like you're too scattered. So like what I do, like when I think about stuff, I think about everything in blocks. For instance, I might be like, okay, eventually I want to have an application that has a side menu and then has a main page that has 3 different sections, like whatever it is. And so I'll, one of my mini projects, I'll build the side menu, understand how it works. And then the second thing, I'll build like that side view which has the 3 sections, and then I'll put it together. So I try to break a website into components and then make mini projects where I build those components, and now I have the skill of all these mini components that I built where I stitch them together into like the main project. um so
Yeah,
but
and just to elaborate on that, I just want to share something where I think a lot of times people are, I don't know, put off by, I don't even know what it is because it wasn't the case with me, but they're put off by like the idea is that you always need to come up with something original. And I really
yeah,
disagree with that because the main point is whether you can do that. It doesn't matter, like, if you know how to set up a blog application, right? Even though, yes, there's 10,000 blog examples and whatever, but if you know how to set it up, trust me, once you're done with that blog application, you have no problem using that blog application, make something more complex and something that's actually unique. And you'll have way more ideas, and it's going to be easier to do that once you already understand the basics. That, because essentially that's how I always approach everything, where it doesn't matter. Like, again, there's so much kind of negativity against CRUD, where essentially once you understand the CRUD, that's your stepping stone. Then you can build stuff on top of that. But if you don't understand the CRUD, then I think it's a big issue to kind of try to build the bigger projects. I also want to do shout out to Jose. So he's from Cuba, and I believe he right now lives in Uruguay. And he doesn't work as a developer yet, but he's looking for a job, and he's like doing I believe some kind of marketing over there. And like we're really like rooting for you, Jose. And yep, and everything's gonna be cool. I know you can do it, and
I'm
you
gonna send you
you'll be
on.
working as a dev in no time, Jose.
Yes, you definitely will get there. But I just sent you on Twitter a link to the Next.js project. That's just the front end. We're mostly going to focus on how to dynamically populate the front end. Right now it's static. But if you want to take a look at what people can expect. But I think like building like a simple website like this, where you also able to have the data be served up from an API, I think that should definitely be like a first step for anybody starting out. And I think it could be like a good barometer to see where you at. It's like, can you build something like this? And also, I saw Engine Boy had a really good question for me. He's like, Paul, how many unfinished projects do you have? So I probably started hundreds of projects, maybe like 500, like a lot. And out of those 500 projects, I probably finished 5. Like, not even kidding. Like, I have my best projects that are done on Netlify, and I'm like, done. It's probably like 5 or 6, not counting uh, like that's like prior to getting a job. Like, after I got a job, it's a little bit different because at my work I had to finish projects. But prior to getting hired, like literally, it's such a small amount. And this is kind of, I was talking about at the beginning of the show, managing your project expectations and making sure that you focus more on finishing. So one of my favorite sayings I heard somewhere is done is better than perfect, right? Because you could always improve it, you could always make it better. But if you have nothing to show for it, that's not good. And so that's kind of like been my kind of thing. It's like, get it done, get it done. And now where I am in my journey, I literally set like limits. So my limit is I can only work on 2 projects at a time that are not work related. And for now, I have Dev Hunt, and then my second project is going to be the video idea that I mentioned to you earlier before jumping on the stream. And then every course I take, it's not to build the projects in the course when I'm learning something new, but it's to get the knowledge to bring to my current project I'm working. So everything is, I'm only working on Dev Hunt, only working on Dev Hunt, because otherwise, especially when you're working on like a bigger size project, like if you try to do too many different things at once, you'll have nothing, you know? Yeah, I'm in the 1% club, Engine Boy. He put a little comment there. It's I'm very proud.
No, that's the interesting like kind of point where, as I was like, there's another theory, which again I don't know how it goes with this one because I don't know like whether if somebody is applying to job how you can apply that. But there's this theory that let's say if you are producing any kind of content, again that could be musician, that could be whatever writer, right? That the idea is if you get stuck at some point, you literally just need to start doing stuff. You know, you cannot,
Yeah.
the moment you start procrastinating, let's say about the project, you're pretty much done, right? So you need to just like, in order to get yourself back out there, you need to produce tons of content in order for
Yeah.
you to be like, okay, this makes sense. This is where I can go and all that. And the same goes, I was listening to Indie Hackers podcast, and one of the founders said that not he didn't, he just mentioned that there's this 10 startups in 10 months, something along those lines, where literally if you want to be, you know, doing any, like if you want to be in a startup business, your first steps are making 10 startups. And essentially, yes, you know that all of them will fail, but the goal is effectively to guide you through the process. Again, I don't know how you can apply this to someone who's applying for a job. So it's kind of, I'm trying to tie it together in my head, but I'm struggling. But yeah, that there is this concept where you essentially, in order to be successful, you just need to produce more.
So the reason why I have like over 500 started project and only 5 finished is because I really believe in fail quicker, fail often, and iterate. Because every time I did a project and never finished it, I still learned something. It doesn't help my portfolio, right? Like, you need to finish projects for your portfolio and get hired, but you iterate it quicker, fail more often, your quality of your thing improves. So there was a study done where they told people to focus on quality versus quantity. And the team that focused more on quantity, they ended up producing more quality stuff faster because they iterated faster. And here's the thing that I didn't know. One of the Michael Jackson's album, or maybe somebody else, I don't remember who it was. It had 12 songs total. They were all amazing. But that album had 500 songs written for it,
Wow.
and then they picked and
Mm,
chose
mm, mm.
12 of the best ones. And
Yeah.
so that's how, like, my approach to portfolio is like, I'm gonna put massive effort into creating bunch of stuff, and then I'm gonna pick the best ones that I can. But I still believe like because that's not a good approach because you won't finish anything uh, for your portfolio. So I'll still set deadlines and be like, okay, this is my best project so far. This is the one that I'm going to put in my portfolio. And I always recommend people do like two smaller projects like we talked about, and then one cornerstone project.
I guess the answer for this one is how to tie them together. I would say then instead of picking 500, let's say, massive projects, if you're picking smaller projects, you don't worry about CSS. You only worry about, let's say, functionality, like
Yeah.
how to toggle stuff, how to fetch data, how to,
Yeah.
I don't know, post data. Again, it could be simple example where, you know what, listen, I'm sending this data to a server and then whatever happens. And when you have 500 of, like, I mean, again, I'm over exaggerating, not 500, but the idea is you strive to complete as many examples like this as you can. The more you'll have them, the moment you'll need to build that one application, again, you don't need to make 10,000 of them, just that one, it's going to be easier to piece those pieces together.
The
That's how
one
I
thing
view
I
it.
would, yeah, yeah, the one thing I would add to that, because I realized, so like the Dev Hunt project that I'm building, it's an iteration on another project that I start building, but then I kind of gave up on it. And then because I knew that, okay, I made too many like mistakes and I want to like try these things differently. So the idea is you need to have a direction that you're moving, and all your failures and all the projects that you're doing, they still have to be moving in that direction. Because if you keep picking things that are not related, like one day, oh, let me build a video game, it's kind of still coding, or let me build like a like data and like what analyze, if you're, unless that's the thing you're going for. I think like whatever you do, like you need to find a theme of the type of projects you want to build, and you continue work on that kind of basically theme to keep moving forward. So even though I failed, like I still was learning React. I'm still learning how to work with JavaScript. So I think like it's okay to fail as long as like the stuff you're doing is moving you forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, you do need to tie them kind of together. If
Yeah.
as I also would say, yeah, if you're going for a web developer job, then I don't know. I'm always pretty. This is again, I might be totally wrong, but I'm just skeptical of games. It doesn't mean that you can go for a game developer, all for it. But I just don't think that JavaScript is the best approach. But again, that's just my opinion. We have Jake. Jake left a comment here. He said we should have a day on here where we can showcase our projects, like share the Netlify link and let you
Yeah.
guys look at them. Yeah, so it's one of those. That idea that somebody looks at the portfolios and whatever,
Yeah,
right?
portfolio
Yeah,
reviews.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
like people like that stuff.
I don't know why I never
Yeah.
found those videos useful. I mean, I don't know. Again, that's not
I
not.
mean, it's good feedback to the person whose project it is, but at the
Mm,
same time, like if you're going to give a project to be like critiqued, like be open to, feedback. A lot of people, they do it more from the standpoint, let me show off. And then if something's broken or whatever, and people point that out, it doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good. So I think it's like a very touchy thing. And I think like if people are going to review projects, you have to be like, hey, we're going to be really honest. We're not going to like make fun of you for that. But if we see something that's not right, we're going to point it out, because otherwise, what's the point of reviewing your project and not giving you feedback, but only like saying nice things about it to stroke your ego? Like to me, and maybe it's because like part of me is like pessimistic. Whenever I do something, I much rather people point out the things that I do wrong than point out things that I do right. So that way I could at least fix those things. You know what I mean?
No, for me it comes down to two things. Like first of all, as a viewer, I never like every time like I usually ended up like 3 minutes in that video and I'm like, well, let me just switch. I don't know why. Again, I cannot pinpoint. But you're absolutely correct. If you're like giving, let's say, your project, then be aware of two things, that there might be some I wouldn't say negative stuff, but just like, proper criticism. Like, if you're asking somebody's opinion, be prepared that they might say something that you don't want to hear. I mean, that's the whole point, right? I also agree with you. I'd rather have people around me who tell me, like, listen, you might look into this, instead of like, no, 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 everything's fine, and then you need to find out that yourself. Uh, but
I was gonna add to that. By the way, like when you talk to people who are really concerned, like not the word concern is not a word, and I don't want to say like real developers, but someone who actually spend enough time in development to understand the difficulty of coding. Whenever they see your code, even if it's bad, they're not going to make fun of you for that. They're not going to say your code is shit. They're not going to say like, what the hell were you thinking? They're just going to help you by saying, hey, did you think about doing it this way? This is something I've done in the past and there's a better approach. So it's going to be very positive experience. So like anytime you have a project and someone gives you negative feedback, automatically just turn that person off. Don't listen to them. That person is full of crap or they're just mean. Because like literally today, I was sitting in Discord at my work and I work on some stuff. And one of the developers came on. He's like, "Hey, Paul, I see you do this a lot. Like, it's not wrong, but he's like, did you know that there's a better way of doing it?" And he kind of showed me like this new way, and it was like very positive experience. And I feel like real developers, that's the type of feedback they're going to give you, which is like good information that will help you get better. As soon as someone starts being mean about your code or like saying, just like distance yourself from that person, because that's not feedback. And so when I get comments even on my code, that someone on YouTube will be like, your code sucks, you're stupid, I'll be like, okay, great, you're very, very helpful, thank you so much. And then I'm just like, whatever. It's like so
no,
that's just
because like it's absolutely correct, because everyone, like again, I don't know how to describe people who give this useful feedback. Again, real developers, I don't know, most developers, or however you want to say it. I think that everyone goes through those iterations. There's
yeah.
things that I literally like learn, and I'm like, oh wow, and I was doing this way. Well, that wasn't particularly good, right? And then someone points it out, and they say, hey, actually, this feature is going to be way better with this type of code. And then you try it out, and you're like, wow, okay, that actually makes sense. So next time when you see somebody else doing, I mean, again, unless you have some of your own issues, you'll approach the people the same way. Instead of telling them like, hey, what are you doing, you're not smart or whatever, you'll be like, hey, there's actually a easier way. And that's totally correct what Paul is saying.
Jake Smith just mentioned something that I actually didn't think about for the longest time and literally started thinking about recently. But another thing you could build for your portfolio, like Jake Smith says, I like building tools. And that's like a viable thing you could do where you create something. Like for instance, I have a friend, he created this thing called Dockerize, which makes it very easy for you to create a Docker image for your Strapi deployment. And like I think there's some value into doing stuff like that. The one thing like I've noticed is like as a beginner, I wouldn't know where to start doing that. So I would still suggest build a traditional projects like a website, that talks to an API. But once you get a little bit better, I think that's actually a cool idea to look into, like building your own tools or building your own like SDK for yourself or something like that.
No, that's definitely going to be the case. And again, I'm going to repeat something that I've mentioned before, where I when I was in LA, there were not many meetups. One of the meetups was with the I believe the bootcamp's name was whatever, already not Codesmith, maybe Codesmith, whatever. You can Google it. It's one of the biggest ones over there. And essentially, their biggest selling point was that instead of building a like Facebook clone application that uses, I don't know, your girlfriend, grandma, and I don't know, your neighbors, right? When you finish the boot camp, like typical boot camp, quote
Yeah.
unquote. Instead, they build tools for developers, and what happens? You have way more users. You
Yeah.
can see the issues, and that, like, I never went to that boot camp, and again, I was just there because of the meetup, and I had no plans. But that really clicked for me. I'm like, that does make sense. That is a good selling point for
And
me to kind of do that.
I'll give you another point. If you do stuff like that that's useful for developers, you're going to have a lot of like start projects on GitHub. A lot of people going to like, follow you. And it's like a really good way to interact with the developer community. So I think
Yeah,
that's
but
a
I just want
brilliant
to
idea.
like add like a side note. It's usually like coming up with the idea is not
Not
easy,
easy,
and
not easy.
plus,
Yeah.
like even if like that functionality is it's gonna require some time and effort. So it's not like something.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be negative, but I don't think that's something you can do over the weekend.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. No, that makes sense. I find like, at least in my opinion, a lot of the tooling, it's more of like node.js development and backend focused, or you're literally working in the terminal when you're building the tool. So it's like slightly different. And so I feel like if someone's trying to get a job, like if you're building tools, and maybe if you're just going to be a backend developer, that makes sense. But if you want to be a front end developer, build a traditional front end developer apps first, get a job, and then once you have a better understanding of programming, then you could start, working on building tools and stuff like that. Another like thing in terms of that, I didn't do it, but now that I work at Strappy, which is an open source company, and there's a lot of open source companies, I do see other people in the community, engaging these open source projects and working on doing like bug bounties where they like find a bug and they, do a pull request and they try to fix it. And that's a cool way, I think, to do it. Or if you build a tool for that particular thing. But I think, um, like for me, I never done any of that stuff because it's like you only have so much time. And so I was like, I want to have, these 3 projects in my portfolio and start applying. And I literally just focus, build one HTML and CSS project, build one React uh, project, and then build one full stack project, even though I ended up using Strappy for my backend, but have that functionality. And that's literally the 3 projects that I had.
no, no. One thing, like one suggestion I could do is, let's say, as far as front end developer, you'll see a bunch of people building like tools, like I don't know, let's say some kind of visual representations of Flexbox or
Yeah.
Grid, right? So you visit the site and then you see, I don't know, there's some kind of again graphical like help instead of literally like lines of like, hey, this is what the feature is doing, but you can actually see in real time. And again, there's a bunch of these small little tools, whether that is a shadow or what. Again, we can go on and on and on. You effectively bunch of those tools that you already see, if you can create similar one, you'll have bunch of like cool experience while you're building it, and
Yeah.
and then people using it. So we
Yeah.
have, sorry.
I was gonna say there's a cool tool that I use. It basically like CSS grid generator, and it literally somebody built it for themselves because they were sick and tired of constantly writing the code themselves. Where you could literally drag and drop and create different grids. And I was like, oh, that's such a cool idea. And I think it's pretty neat.
Okay, so we have one one very futuristic, not futuristic, but one like, no, actually we have two broad questions. So let's start with the first one. It's something that I think we already answered in the last one. Hi John, I have a question. Sometimes I got stuck in logic building. Please suggest me how to strong logic building projects. I know this is like the most generic answer or whatever, unless again you go for some kind of job that is asking for the algorithms. I don't see the point of just sitting and solving the algorithms unless you can build something. I really liked what Paul said, that first you need to build something, and then once you like whatever those quote unquote basic things, right? When you can fetch the data, when you can do CRUD, when you can build the e-commerce, okay, then you can go and literally start looking at the
Yeah.
algorithms and all that. And as far as just regular uh, um, regular like logic and functionality, it only comes from just doing that
Practice.
thing.
Yeah.
Understanding how would you set up a request to get the data, what makes most sense as far as sending it, and I just literally repeat, 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 and then the more functionalities you learn, the easier it's going to be to put that logic together. There is no secret or some kind of, I don't know, some
I
some
did
some
read a
secret way.
book in the past, which I thought was kind of cool. It's called like Think Like a Programmer, and it's just general like idea of how to think about things. But at the end of the day, it's like a big picture overview. I think a lot of that, like you said, the best way is just from experience, like of getting stuck and then figuring out solutions yourself and then doing it over a long period of time. And that's where that experience comes from.
Because if you think about it, right? So let's say you have some kind of task. Let's say, I don't know, like let's just go very like kind of straightforward, and let's say data fetching, right? What are you gonna do most likely? Okay, you might look some courses. You'll see one type of way how to fetch data. Then if you don't see that in a course, what are you gonna do? You're gonna type in a search engine how to do
Yep.
blah 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 blah. What are you gonna get? Bunch of blog posts. What are you just read through the blog posts and you need to see what type of answers are. And two things are gonna happen. First, there's gonna be some repeating pattern. So if you see the pretty much the same answer in four of them, I mean it's gonna be like ding 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 ding. Okay,
Yep.
that kind of makes sense. So everybody's using that, right? So that's number one. And then second thing, essentially you'll just see like what is the like good approach. I mean, maybe it's not going to be the same exact solution, but there's going to be, I don't know, some general setup that actually like they all use, and those things effectively just stick with you. You're like, okay, so as far as data fetching, this is what I need to do, and that's it. And then you move on to the next feature, next feature, next feature,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And
there's
that's
really
a good approach. That makes sense. Just, you know, do, just do, and then see what the common
do do
patterns
do
are. Do. That's
do
it.
you have one question for one more?
Yeah,
Yeah, we just need to be fast. Okay,
it's good. It's fine.
we have let me ask this for like the last time. Is there a future in coding regarding the AI hype that is currently sweeping the world? Uh, as far as I understand, is there a question? Is there a future in coding? And then is it because the AI is going to take the jobs, or we're talking about the AI jobs coding and whatever? Regardless, in my opinion, yes. I don't I don't know even how to explain that. I just for me, I don't see the point of uh let's say predicting the future and then
Until it
making
gets here.
making those decisions right now, because it kind of like listen, like you don't know what things are going to happen tomorrow. So why would
Yeah.
I make my life like why would I, let's say, be like, no, you know what, I'm going to be a bricklayer because there's an AI. I have been hearing about
Uh,
the AI
you're gonna
for the
have
last
brick laying robots. They're gonna take your job for sure, faster than programming. So yeah, I think it's very important for people to live in the now and not in the future. Because if, let's say, I say, like, looking seriously at the camera, say, yes, AI is going to take our jobs. There's going to be no developer jobs next year. Like, I'm joking. Don't take me seriously. But you might look at that and be like, oh, then what's the point? And you might not learn to code, and you might not get into coding, and you might not get the awesome benefits. And so the way I look at the future, and I talk to other developers, is kind of cool. It's great. But the like what is going to happen, there's going to be like really really smart people, and these are the people with PhDs and like really smart people who are creating these AI algorithms. And what they're doing is basically creating tools for you that you'll be able to use as a developer to make your development time more efficient. But there's not going to be, at least anytime soon, like in the next 10 years, it's not going to be like this thing where everything's going to be written by AI, by itself without any guidance from a developer. And so the way I looked at the future, and there's a great book I read a long time ago called The Average is Over. And basically, what they were saying, the future is going to be people who are able to work together with AI. So as a developer, you pair me with an AI, like, I'll give like a very simple example. Uh, uh, the Copilot, and now I'm able to build my things way faster and more efficiently, right? But I still need to be in a driving seat to direct where the application is going, because AI is not going to be able to take your customer's requests, think about what the customer wants, have that conversation with the customer, and then decide what the best approach is. We're not there yet, and that's not going to happen in a long time. And so, like, you need people to basically guide and use the AI tools. So basically, the way I look at it, I'm going to have really cool tools, like, 2, 3, 4 years from now, that I'm going to build cooler stuff that I never dreamed of building, but I'll still have a job as a developer.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I know it might sound ridiculous, but I've been hearing this about like how whatever machines or AI is going to take away a job already. I don't know how many years. Literally, like I would say 4 years before I even got into the coding. So we're talking about long enough. So I wouldn't. Again, I'm not going to plan my life based on what I'm hearing. Like
So,
if that time comes, then you'll need to
yeah,
learn something new in order to stay relevant. That's how I view it.
And exactly. And if you just focus on development, you'll see the trends, you'll see where they're leaning. And because you didn't wait to start coding, you'll have that coding foundation, and you'll be able to pivot into the direction that the world is heading to continue to stay relevant. And there's a funny thing Jake Smith is like, because we were talking about project reviews, and he's like, so when are we going to start sharing projects? Listen, if anybody wants to share their project, go to Coding After 30. I will have you on stream. I will tell you all about your project, whatever you
Yes,
want to
by the
hear,
way, Paul has
because
stream right away. So after party is again in at Paul's house.
yeah, Coding After 30, where you watch me cry when I do coding and stuff like that. But no, and I know, like, I keep saying I have to go. Another question that we did talk a lot about, and Slipstream or One asked, what are your thoughts about starting freelancing? And the way I look at it, I'll give you an example that has nothing to do with web development. So let's say I wanted to build like brick patios, and I want to do that freelancing and have clients. Well, what do I need to be able to do first? Well, I need to have that patio building experience that I have to acquire. And once I have that experience, if I want to freelance as a bricklaying patio maker, whatever, because I actually done this, then I also need to know how to find clients. I need to be really good at managing, going after clients who owe me money. I have to make sure I keep up on my taxes. I have to handle how to market my services. I need to handle like how to do my financing. So that's a lot of extra jobs. And it's the same thing with development. Like, if you want to do freelancing, number one, you need to know how to code. And if you know how to code, get a job. It's just like way easier. And after you build more experience, you build more like connections where you know that finding clients is going to be easier, and you understand how the whole business works rather than just the coding part, then yeah, go freelancing. So I tried doing freelancing in the past, and it was way harder than it was for me to get a job. And people that tell you freelancing is easy, I bet they're selling you a course. But I'll give one shout out. So Brad Travesty paired up with some dude. They have a freelancing course available, and he literally, in the first video, because I watch all videos on Udemy, because I'm an addict when it comes to that, I give him props for saying this is really hard and you're not going to be successful overnight, and it will take years for you to build your business. And I'm like, props for you for being honest about the effort that it will take for people to go and do something freelancing. But I everybody I know, like, I don't know, like, all the successful freelancers that I know, and I'm not one of them. I tried; it was mediocre. But all the people that I know, it all took him like 3 to 5 years to build like a business, and then eventually they had to hire other people to take over certain like things. It's not easy. Like, I think it's actually really, really hard. So my thoughts on it: just get a job first. Unless you know how to code, and you're really good at sales, and you're really good at like finding clients, and you're really good at following up and all this stuff. Like, I'll tell you one horror story that you will experience as a freelancer is you'll build a project, and people will be like, oh, I don't want to pay you. Just like that. And now you have to deal with that. What, are you going to take them to court? Like, if you charge someone $1,500 for a website, let's say they paid you $500 up front, you finish the whole project, and now they owe you another 1,000, and they're like, no, I'm not going to pay you. And you're going to take them to court and spend more than the actual cost of the project. And so there's all these little things that people don't think about. And so for me, it's like, unless you're really smart about it and you have experience and you've done it before and you know how to do it, yeah, go freelancing. But if you just thinking about it, get a job first, focus on building experience.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. As funny as it sounds, it's easier to get a job than work as a freelancer in the beginning. I know it doesn't seem that way. You're like, well, wait a minute, I'm just going to be learning stuff while I'm, doing the job and everything, and that's a cool learning experience. But what you also need to understand is that um, you basically get paid for your knowledge.
Yeah.
And if your knowledge is you're just acquiring the knowledge, you effectively are going to be like, in the
Bottom.
let's say bottom or whatever.
Like,
You're
very
going to be
bottom.
competing for jobs that you probably don't want to compete,
So, yeah.
you know.
So maybe a lot of people don't know this. Prior to being a developer, like, I operated a very successful mixed martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu school, and my school became profitable within a year. And this was like a brick and mortar business, which is like unheard of for a business to start making money within a year. And people like, wow, you were like so lucky. Like, how did it happen? Oh, before opening my own Brazilian jiu-jitsu school, I had 10 years of experience of running and managing somebody else's Brazilian jiu-jitsu school. I knew how to sell the service. I knew how to get clients. I knew how to have a proper class. I knew what it took. And so once I had that 10 years of experience, opening up my school all of a sudden was easy. But if you're just learning, like, yeah, just like you said, you're going to be on the bottom of the barrel and you're going to be outcompeted by all the people that have way more experience than you. And those are the people that are going to win the jobs.
No, for me, I definitely view it that way. Where once you get the job, once you get the experience, the better you get in that specific, let's say, niche that you're working, the more chances are going to be that somebody is going to be like, "Look, I need your services to do this, 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 this," and the more you know, the easier is going to be to effectively get the jobs, get those clients, and all that. But it starts with that knowledge, in my opinion. That kind of goes there. And yes, Jake is making a good point. I wouldn't release the project to them, or if they didn't pay, I wouldn't take it down. But the problem, Jake, is that you already spent that time building. You already did
And
like that month, and it's like,
and
okay, and what
and
now?
here's
I still have to pay my rent.
you have to pay your rent, you have to pay all the bills. And here's the biggest counter argument to that for me. The fact that you have to make that statement is already means that it's like way too much stress to deal. Like, I don't want to be at a place where I have to think, oh, if they don't pay me, I'm not going to release that project. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That's too much of like a risk. And
And
like,
people are difficult.
yeah, yeah. And so for me, like, there's I look, like, you're an entrepreneur, John. You're doing like your own thing, and it's not easy. I'm striving to build a product that I want to do myself, and it is hard. And what I would say, and Jake, this is like the advice that I did, is coding is awesome because you're learning a skill that will make you hireable, and you could always do freelancing and try to go into freelancing like as a side hustle. So what I did was I tried to make freelance projects and find freelance clients while I was learning to code, and I was trying to get a job. And I ended up getting a job way faster than becoming successful as a freelancer, just because there's a lot to do. And I'm saying, like, it doesn't mean that you can't do it, but I want people to really have, like, when people see these like courses, become a freelancer, make this much money, like, people are selling you a dream of success, but they're not telling you how to get there. And so people buy the dream, and then they get really dismotivated when they try to accomplish it, because they realize the secret is not the course. The secret is the work and the effort you're going to put in. And there is no shortcuts. You have to put in the time, you have to build that experience. And so a lot of times when you see people that do start businesses, it's they get the experience first by working somewhere else, and then they start freelancing. But they don't start freelancing with no experience and no skill, because that's going to be very difficult.
All right, then on this lovely note, I think we will, yeah, we'll finish for today. And thank you, everyone. Thank
Yep.
you, Paul.
No, thank you, John. I was going to say quickly, do a plug in 20 minutes. Go to Coding After 30 channel. I'm going to be crying a lot while trying to figure out what
Are
the
you
hell's wrong
building
with my
tonight or are
application.
you
To the
interviewing?
Fridays I build, and then Saturdays I talk about. So I'm going to stream tonight, 9 p.m. CST time, building my project. And tomorrow morning I'm going to stream at 11 a.m. CST, talking about cool resources to learn. Uh, to get experience building things. I'm going to basically play around with two sites.
So you're not
One, I'm not.
interviewing anybody tomorrow?
No, not tomorrow. And I'm going to one website. I was introduced by Engine Boy. I'm not going to say what it is. Come tomorrow to find out. And then the other one is going to be front end mentors that I'm going to play around with and see and talk about the value that it brings.
You're going to
Engine.
showcase Engine Boys project?
No, not Engine Boy's project, but he recommended a. Okay, I'll tell you what
Okay.
There's a
No,
cool
no, no.
website called. I'll tell you just in case some people be lazy to come to my stream tomorrow. But basically, I want to showcase React Play again. It's an amazing website. Engine Boy introduced me to it.
Mhm.
It's basically where you could build like React, like projects or components where people will give you feedback and do
Mhm.
like code reviews. So it's a really cool way of like learning to code by building and getting experience. And the second one that I'm going to talk about is front end mentors. And I think like what I'm basically getting to is finding resources that allow you to simulate doing things that you would be doing at your job. And I like those two approaches a lot best because instead of doing irrelevant algorithms that are done out of context of your job, React Play and especially front end mentors, you literally like you get a basically they'll tell you this is what you need to build. So you basically get the requirements and then you build the things based on the requirements. And I really like that because it simulates that learning and working process. And so that's what I'm going to talk about Saturday morning after crying on my stream tonight after building my thing. Um,
All right. Yeah.
but yeah, thanks everyone, and everybody have a great rest of the weekend. And John, as always, thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, Paul. Thank
Yeah,
you, everyone who participated in chat. And yeah, don't forget, Paul is
best ever
live in
web
like,
dev podcast. The best,
yes,
the best.
best,
It's like the
the
best.
best
It's
one. The
it
best.
really is. You know, it really is. It's just people don't know it yet. You know what I mean? They
Yeah,
haven't
they
got
haven't
enough
found
discovery
us
yet.
in
Yeah, they haven't discovered us yet.
in Shopify or
No, but to be honest, I listened to one of our podcasts the other day. Like I forgot which episode, and then I listened to the one with Wes Boss, and I was like, they're literally doing the things we're doing. They're literally copying our format. You know, it's like literally
yeah.
just as exciting. The only difference is they have more sponsors. So we need to do more sponsors. All right,
Hey,
this
we're sponsored by Floats, CSS Floats and jQuery, so
exactly,
we have the
exactly.
best
Whoa, be careful
sponsors.
with jQuery. You know, we're gonna get more trouble.
I'm gonna get yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways, we're
Hey,
thank
thank
you
you so much,
everyone.
everyone. Have a
Yep,
good
and
weekend,
we'll
a
see you next
good
week.
day,
Bye
good
bye.
night, good
Have a
evening.
great,
Bye.
awesome. Have an awesome Friday night.
Yeah.